With the story still developing about how the Justice Department was spying on Associated Press journalists, I wanted to know, is there a way for a journalist to keep his sources secure? Is there a way to keep our information away from the grubby hands of the government? To find out, I talked to my friend, also fellow journalist and techie, Tim Poole. I just really wanted to know, what do you think of this recent AP Justice Department hacking scandal that's going on right now?
I think it's funny. Everyone's acting surprised that the government's spying on journalists.
The government's spying on everybody, for God's sakes.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've been followed. I'm sure you've been followed. I know people have been followed. And now we find out that the Department of Justice was, getting phone records for AP journalists, and everyone's acting like, oh, I can't believe this is happening. It's a scandal. It's like, it is. It's really bad. We know it's bad. It's evidence that this stuff is bad and it's happening. But here come on, we already knew stuff's going on.
Yeah, to me, it kind of really adds to the chilling effect that already has been happening because of Obama and his use of the Espionage Act more than all the other presidents before him has already created a huge chilling effect with sources and confidential informants and whistleblowers. Right now, even the AP, one of the most kind of biggest news agencies, they're now targeted, and now everybody who came to them is going to be probably also penalized by the Obama administration like other journalists have. But to me, the spying is definitely not a surprise. I mean, in Bluffdale, Utah, the NSA has a huge spying center that could spy on every single conversation for the next 100 years. But is there any way journalists or even individuals who are doing journalism, can they protect themselves from the spying?
So first, you have to know that there's no such thing as security. And this is something that people need to understand. There's just layers of security. But it is time for people to start adding those layers, especially journalists. So the most important things depends on if you're using Android or iOS. So for my Android device, this is the device that I use pretty much all the time for all my calls. I use an app called Text Secure. So this is an encrypted texting service. You can verify with the person you're texting with so that your communication is secure. And then if I close it out and you try to reopen the app, you'll have to put in a password. So it's good to have a very long password. Depending on here's another little cool app. It's called Simple Notepad. It's actually called Mobile Hidden Camera, and this allows you to shoot video with the screen being off. The most important thing about this for me is that it saves battery by having the screen off, but you also can't tell that it's filming. This is important if someone is trying to violate your rights. You have every right to film in public. You want to tell people you're filming especially, but sometimes in certain circumstances, you don't want people to make assumptions about what you're doing because they see a camera on, so you'd leave it like this. Hiding the camera feature can be dangerous. Just so everyone's aware.
There's different state laws that prohibit you from filming secretly, of course.
And there's definitely a gray moral area in surreptitiously recording video. But for activists around the world, this can be extremely important if a brutal regime is coming and spying on you and trying to violate your rights when you have every right to film.
Like you said before, there's really no real way to protect your data, but there's layers of security. Like you told me before, you could have a bike, but you could have a bike lock on it. But if someone really wants to steal it, they could still steal it, but you could still have preventative measures to make it a lot harder or sometimes even impossible to get data from. What kind of other tips and techniques would you recommend for journalists out there who have sources and confidential informants who want to keep that information private? What tips and recommendations would you have for them?
Encrypting your communication is very important. It's not going to protect you from a very determined organization, and we don't need the Department of Justice is the example we're using here, but there are private organizations that do this as well, like we saw with the WikiLeaks and the HB Gary hacks back last year. Private organizations are going to do this stuff as well. Other governments are going to do this, depending on stories you've covered. But then we also have other groups. I'm not going to talk about them, because then they'll come after me. So we'll just leave it at private groups from around the world who don't like what you have to say will come after you. And sometimes it's better not to talk about them. If you're using the iPhone, then you want to use Silent Circles apps. They have Silent Phone and Silent Text. This is a paid service, but what this does is it routes all your communication, it encrypts it on your device, sends it to a server that's in Canada, and then sends it to the other party. This is good. because then nobody is actually storing your communication. They're only storing encrypted data that they can't read. Granted, encryption can be broken, and as time goes on, it gets easier and easier to do so with computing power and new methods. But like I was saying before, there's no way to protect yourself 100% of the time. But if you add these layers, it makes it harder for it makes it harder for this stuff to happen.
It's also smart to do little things like put a passcode on your phone, which I know has some limitabilities that you could tell us about in a little bit. But some states have actually passed laws. If you're pulled over, the cops could actually grab your phone and actually look into all your private information, all your photos, and what you've been doing on your phone. You could easily protect that by putting a passcode, and I guess you could just say, well, I forgot my password, and not help the officer, spy on everything you're doing.
I'm not going to say anything to that. But when it comes to putting a passcode on your phone, don't use the PIN and don't use the pattern lock. Use an actual passcode. Those are harder to break. The problem with if you can see it, you'll see the smudges from my finger touching the phone. The swipe, the pattern lock, you can actually see the pattern. And then with pins, you can actually see the 4 buttons they use. And it's 4 or 5 times you're probably going to figure it out. But with passcodes,
it's a lot harder to
it's
find
a lot
out.
harder. Yeah.
And also at the same time, I know the old ISO system on the iPhone had vulnerability with that. I know you found this out yourself.
So this is the exploit that I use as a. Well, I'm not going to open it. It's actually pretty recent. This exploit still exists on most of the iOS devices. Apple released a patch, the latest update, the past few updates, get rid of this problem. But most people haven't updated yet. I've run into several people at a bunch of different conferences, and I would say about 80% of the people I've talked to haven't updated their phone. It's a bit complicated to break into the lock screen, but complicated, I should say, for the average person. But for someone who's determined, they find your phone and you're using. It doesn't matter what your lock screen is, passcode or PIN on the iOS. If you haven't updated to the latest version, they can walk right through that. Another little interesting tidbit that everyone needs to know about is that if you go to Settings, General, About, and scroll all the way down to Advertising, there's a button that says Limit Ad Tracking, and it's off. So it's not only is it very hard to find this button, but it's also very confusing in that it says Limit Ad Tracking Off. Most people see that and they say, oh, but it's off. And I have to tell them, no, that's the limit ad. You have to turn that on.
Yeah, you did that to me.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel pretty stupid.
Yeah. So, one of the problems with this is they say you get a unique identifier. It's an advertising identifier that in no way is related to you personally, but it shows all your behaviors. So there's argument to say that by looking at your random number and what time a tweet was posted, what time you activated this app or that app, they can correlate that to things you've done in the public and in a short amount of time figure out what identifier is yours. So it's important to limit that ad tracking, which doesn't stop it entirely, but also frequently reset your advertising identifier if you're using an iPhone. This is one of the reasons why I don't necessarily recommend iPhones. Personally, I'd say if you have the expertise or you have someone who could help, get an Android device and put a custom operating system on it. I'm running, this is the phone I use for a bit more security. It's running Cyanogen 9, which is a custom operating system. It gives me a bit more freedom in like root access. I can use it as a mobile hotspot. And then I can run a program called Tor, or the Onion Relay. What this does is it anonymizes my traffic so that if anybody is monitoring what I'm doing or monitoring a website, they can't, that IP address that hits that site, it'll be anonymized. So they won't be able to directly relate that to me. Although it's not 100% safe, again, it's important everyone knows this.
It's just a bike lock, pretty much.
It's another layer of security. Yeah. And that's the most important thing you need to know when you're doing dangerous research.
Or having people contact you with private information or confidential information.
Yes.
You definitely want to make sure their safety is the first concern you have, because you don't want them to get in trouble like they have been under this Obama administration. Now, I know also a recent company, a major media company, contacted you before. I'm not going to mention them, and they actually said that they're getting iPhones for all their employees to encourage social networking. What was your reaction to that?
I'm torn between face palming, but being excited that they want to embrace mobile technology. Too many companies understand everyone understands the power of mobile, but they're not. Where's the mobile department? Where are they actively getting their journalists, their employees to use it to generate content for the company? We're seeing all the it's called user-generated content, but where is the actual mobile content? The hard thing about iPhones is that given enough resources, there are a lot of exploits that people can take advantage of your device with, and it requires Apple to fix them for the most part. With Android, you can customize it. So it's a bit of there are pros and cons. With Android, it's easier for the smallest little hacker kitty to break into your phone. It's easier than an iPhone. However, with certain customization and security features, it can actually be a bit more secure than the iPhone would be. So that combined with the overall ability to customize it as a tool itself, to me makes it much more suitable. Particularly with the fact that you can build your own custom operating system for it if you have enough resources.
So you get a pretty good lock on your bike with the Android operating system compared to some of the smaller locks you could have with the iPhone.
It's mostly just a bunch of little locks. Based on the work I've done, that Android is a lot better. We've seen problems in the past with major news organizations using iOS devices, but at the same time, you just don't hear about stuff when it happens on Android. So do your research, hire security people, take a course in information security and technology. Journalists especially need to be learning how technology works. I bumped into someone from a major news network just about 2 months ago who said, "I don't know what Twitter is." And this is a major news network in New York, and they're reporting live on the scene. And how at this point,
just facepalm a lot.
It's just it's just like, okay, no, but I get it. I don't blame them. You can't. Journalists aren't technology people, and technology people aren't journalists. So it's really hard to find that in between, where you've got the right product for journalists that's easy to use, makes sense, and affords some security.
Yeah. Technology is always changing. The answer always changes as well, and there's so many different solutions out there. So definitely do your own research. But companies could also hire you, journalism companies who do this work. They could actually contact you, and you could actually consult them.
Yeah, if anyone's interested, I'm more than willing to help out. And aside from me and my general mobile understanding in mobile journalism and technology, etc., I work with a bunch of really, really smart people who in turn help me when I have questions. So we're always willing to help, and we want to help. We want to bring these organizations into the 21st century and
Hi, this is Alex from FederalJack.com and Hack Miami, and I was arrested here for filming the police. They erased my footage, but I got it back. Here's my story.
We found out about the Stratfor email from folks at WikiLeaks who had discovered it, who had been given it, I guess, and they said that we were mentioned in these leaks and that we should take a look.